Can you imagine a situation where two pilots flying a plane actually forgot to land the plane that they were in control of? Now, this is the situation of Northwest Airlines Flight 188, where the two pilots literally forgot to land the plane. On the evening of October the 21st, 2009, an Airbus A320 carrying 144 passengers and 5 crew members took off from San Diego, destined for Minneapolis, St. Paul. By all measures, it was supposed to be a quite uneventful flight, the kind that blends into millions of safe journeys happening every year. But what transpired turned into one of aviation's most bizarre stories, not because of mechanical failure, terrorism, or even the weather, but because two experienced pilots stopped paying attention and forgot to land the plane that they were flying. Now, for 1 hour and 15 minutes, Flight 188 flew across America's heartland in complete and utter silence, unresponsive to air traffic control, NORAD and company dispatchers, and even to fellow pilots who were flying planes nearby. Now, in the post 9/11 world, when the memory of hijacked planes weaponized into tragedy was still fresh, the sudden radio silence of this aircraft wasn't just unnerving, it was quite terrifying. Air traffic control is built on rhythm and expectation. Every flight checks in as it passes from one sector to another, creating a chain of accountability. Somewhere between Denver and Minneapolis, Flight 188 broke this chain. Air traffic controllers called the plane. Then they called again. There was no reply. Minneapolis Center tried repeatedly to contact the aircraft. Dispatch sent messages. Other planes were asked to reach out to the plane. But yet, there was total silence. For 75 long and agonizing minutes, the Airbus A320 silence sliced through the skies, its transponder still visible on radar, but its voice absent in the ether. Inside command centers, unease escalated into alarm. Had the plane been hijacked? Were the crew members incapacitated? Was this a replay of September 11, 2001, unfolding in slow motion? Even the White House Situation Room was alerted. Fighter jets were considered. For more than an hour, America did not know if it had another airborne disaster in the making. And yet, the jet continued calmly on autopilot with 144 unsuspecting passengers chatting, sipping their drinks, or dozing off, unaware that controllers and government officials on the ground were quietly preparing to take down the jet if necessary. Finally, at 8:14 p.m. Central Time, voices crackled back onto the airwaves. Controllers near Eau Claire, Wisconsin, managed to reach Flight 188. The two pilots, calm and almost casual, announced that they had lost situational awareness and they missed their destination. The Airbus had overshot Minneapolis by more than 130 miles. It was the kind of explanation that sounded almost surreal. These weren't rookie pilots in a training simulator. They were veteran aviators with thousands of hours logged in. But how did two seasoned pilots actually simply forget to land a damn airplane? The answer, revealed in the following days, stunned the airline industry. Investigators discovered that Captain Timothy Cheney and First Officer Richard Cole were not asleep, as some initially suspected, nor were they incapacitated. Instead, they had both been on their laptops, their personal laptops, and not company-issued devices. And the two pilots were discussing a new crew scheduling system used by Northwest. Airline policy explicitly banned the use of personal electronics in the cockpit. Now, the two pilots' defense, what was it? They claimed they were engaged in a spirited discussion about bid schedules, work assignments, and seniority lists. The pilots were so absorbed that they turned down the radio calls, the dispatch messages, and even the increasingly frantic attempts to reach them. The reality only struck when a flight attendant stepped into the cockpit to ask the pilots a simple question. The question that she asked was, "Hey, when are we landing?" Only then did they glance outside, realize the lights of Minneapolis were well behind them, and then both pilots scrambled to re-establish contact. It wasn't fatigue, it wasn't an emergency, it wasn't even sabotage. It was distraction. The mundane kind that creeps into everyday life when we check our phones while driving or miss a conversation because we were glued to our screen. Only this time, it happened at 37,000 feet with 149 lives on board. Now, the NTSB investigations didn't stop at blaming the pilots. It also uncovered four major flaws in the system meant to safeguard against human lapses. Number one was the no audible alert for messages. Dispatchers had sent textile messages to the cockpit through ACARS, which means the Aircraft Communication Addressing and Reporting System. The pilots later claimed that they didn't notice them. Now, why? Because there was no oral chime or any warning. Messages simply appeared on the screen, easy to miss if you weren't looking at it. Now, number two was the cockpit voice recorder limits. Now, the CVR only stored the last 30 minutes of cockpit audio. Now, by the time investigators had access, the crucial 75-minute period of silence had already been overwritten. The most telling evidence, whether they ignored calls, argued, or genuinely discussed schedules, was lost forever. Number three, the slow notification to defense authorities. Astonishingly, it took over an hour before NORAD was formally notified of the radio blackout. Now, in a post 9/11 world, this was a glaring delay. The FAA later rewrote the procedures, and now, if a plane fails to respond within 5 minutes, defense agencies must be alerted. And number four, these oversights reveal something unsettling. The aviation safety net, as strong as it is, still had many holes. Now, for the two pilots, the consequences were swift and severe. The FAA revoked their licenses, citing total dereliction of duty. Both careers ended overnight. Cheney and Cole maintained that they were never asleep and they were in full control of the plane, but to regulators and passengers and to the public, that defense rang hollow. If you can fly 150 miles past an airport without even noticing, are you really in control of the plane? Now, the airline itself, Northwest Airlines, recently acquired by Delta at the time, faced harsh scrutinies. The airline had to answer uncomfortable questions about cockpit discipline, communication systems, and whether company culture tolerated casual disregard for company rules. Now, the event also left passengers shaken. Many of these passengers didn't even know what happened until they landed. But once the news broke, anger surged. The people said things like, "We trusted them with our lives," while they were busy playing on their laptops. Now, what makes Flight 188 haunting is not the potential for mechanical breakdown or the terrorism, but the reminder that the most advanced aircraft in the world still depends on human attention, and that attention can be fragile. Psychologists call it inattentional blindness. Now, this means that when you're so focused on one thing, you miss everything else. It's where drivers crash while texting. It's where surgeons sometimes overlook instruments left inside patients. And it is why these two pilots, sitting in a multi-million-dollar cockpit, can forget to land an aircraft. Now, it forced difficult questions like, Should airplanes completely ban personal electronics in the cockpit or even during a cruise? How do we prevent over reliance on autopilot, which can lull even professionals into complacencies? And at what point does pilot error stop being a personal feeling and become a systemic issue of training and design? Now, thankfully, Flight 188 ended up landing safely. No one was harmed. The plane landed without incident, and passengers disembarked into a story where they could tell jokes for years. Now, in the grand history of aviation disasters, it is an almost comical footnote. No, the flight had overshot its destination because the pilots, as comedians, got distracted by their laptops. Now, how can you get distracted while flying a plane? Beats me. But behind the humor lies a sobering lesson. Aviation is built on layers of protection, but these layers still rest on the fallible shoulders of us as human beings. The incident forced regulators to tighten procedures, airlines to revisit their policies, and passengers to confront an uncomfortable truth that sometimes our fate rests not in engines or on plane wings, but in whether two pilots sitting in the cockpit at the front of the plane are actually paying attention to what they're doing. Now, let me know what you guys think. If you were on this plane, how would you have reacted knowing that the pilots weren't paying attention and you were late by almost 90 minutes for landing? Let me know what you guys think and how would you react. And until the next time, I'm out of here. Peace.